Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. So yesterday, the All USFL team was announced, and so it's essentially like the All Pros, but for the USFL. So we're going to be going over each player on the All USFL team, whether or not I think they deserve to be on it, and if they don't deserve to be on it, what other player was snubbed, and who should be on it in place of that player. So starting off with the offensive team, quarterback Kyle Sloter of the Breakers. So he does lead the league in passing yards, but he also leads the USFL in interceptions. I think he does deserve to be here. I think he's probably the best quarterback. But if Case Cookus did start from week 1, I think Case Cookus would be here. Because he's been really, really good, and he didn't start to week 3 or 4. So Sloter, but if Cookus played the entire season, he would be here. The running backs selected were Darius Victor of the Generals and Reggie Corbin of the Panthers. So Victor, I agree with. He ran over his competition. He's like a one-man wrecking crew, and leads the league with 9 rushing touchdowns. He's just been very, very dominant as a rusher for the Generals, and he deserves to be on this list. And for Reggie Corbin, I don't think he deserves to be on this list. He had 514 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he was good, but I think I would rather have Jordan Ellis on here, who's a bit better of a pass catcher, and also has more rushing yards and rushing touchdowns with 564 and 4. So I think Jordan Ellis was snubbed with that spot. Reggie Corbin, yes, he was good, but he was very, very inconsistent. One game he'd go off for like 120 yards, the next game he'd have like 30. On to the wide receivers. So the wide receivers selected were Victor Bolden of the Stallions and Kevontae Turpin of the Generals. So there was several really good receivers this year. These were probably the best two. Turpin was definitely the best receiver. He was one of the best in the USFL. He definitely deserves a shot in the NFL. He has a league-leading 472 receiving yards and also 4 touchdowns, but that is one behind Isaiah Zuber. The second spot, so for the first spot, I agree with Turpin. Second spot, Victor Bolden didn't get a ton of yards, but he was like a target and catch machine. And he still ended up second, and I believe he did miss a game or two. So I would give the second spot to Victor Bolden, but statistically he wasn't the most impressive. Tight end was Sal Cannella of the Breakers. He was definitely the best tight end. Leads all tight ends with 364 receiving yards. Also has 2 touchdowns, but Bug Howard of the Stars is the only tight end with more. So definitely I agree with Sal Cannella at tight end. Offensive line, there isn't a whole bunch to say about each player. So I'm not going to go into detail, but the offensive linemen are Terry Poole of the Generals, Jerron Jones of the Bandits, guards Cameron Hunt and Garrett McGinn of the Stallions and Generals, and center was Jared Thomas of the Breakers. On to the defense, starting off with the 2 defensive end spots. They went to Chris Odom of the Gamblers and Davin Bellamy of the Breakers. So Odom was the sack leader with 11 and also forced 6 fumbles. And he was one of the bright spots for the Gamblers defense, which really had... They actually had an all-USFL member on each level. They had they had Chris Odom. Then I'll get to the others in a second. And then so I do agree with Chris Odom, because he was really, really good. He was the only player that's gotten to the quarterback more than 10 times. And for Davin Bellamy, he started off the season looking like he was unstoppable. Then he slowed down, but still a good season for him. 7 tackles for a loss and 5.5 sacks. So overall, with both defensive ends, I would agree. Defensive tackles was Toby Johnson of the Generals and Reggie Howard of the Breakers. So Johnson wasn't a stat stuffer, but more of a space eater for the Generals, and also this guy's huge. He's 6'4", 320. So he's the perfect size to be an NFL player. So another player I think should get a chance to the NFL, and I will do a video of players in the USFL that deserve a chance in the NFL in the future. Just make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss when that comes out. But he's more of a space eater, not a stat stuffer. Finishing the season with 33 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, and 2 sacks. Also an interception, which is very rare for a defensive tackle. So I agree with Toby Johnson. And for Reggie Howard, I definitely agree with this. He was very good at getting to the quarterback, especially for defensive tackle. 4.5 sacks and 9 tackles for a loss. So, again, I agree with both defensive tackles. On to the linebackers. We had DeMarcus Gates of the Stallions, Donald Payne of the Gamblers, and Gerard Fernandez of the Breakers. So, DeMarcus Gates had a monster season for the Stallions. 5.5 sacks, 57 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 10 tackles for loss, and an interception. So, he did a bunch of everything. He was a really good pass rusher, coming off the edge where they used him most. Also, good in coverage. Overall, he was like a Micah Parsons of the USFL. So I definitely think he deserves to be on this list. When I'm thinking linebackers, he's the top player, I think, at the linebacker position. But another player that jumps into my head is Donald Payne of the Gamblers. So I think Scooby Wright could also be here, but Payne, he had a really, really good season. Only player with more than 100 tackles with 108. Also, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. So overall, really, really good season. And Scooby Wright, he also had a great season. Only played 6 games, though. But had 46 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles in those 6 games. So Donald Payne definitely deserves it, but shout out to Scooby Wright for having a good season. And the third linebacker spot was Gerard Fernandez of the Breakers. So maybe you could have Scooby Wright here, because technically he's on the outside of the 3 linebackers, but he plays inside linebacker for the Breakers, and Scooby Wright plays inside linebacker for the Stallions. But he had 86 tackles, a sack and a half, 3 forced fumbles. So I think you could argue either Fernandez or Scooby Wright here. I would give the slight edge to Fernandez because he had more games played. On to the defensive backs. Starting off with the cornerbacks, Channing Stripling of the Stars and Will Likely of the Gamblers. So Stripling definitely deserves it. He had 7 interceptions in 9 games. That's really good. Almost an interception a game. Plus, sorry, I lost where I was. Plus, he also had 11 passes defended, or passes broken up. And for Will Likely, he was always one of the better cornerbacks in the USFL, which is the reason, because he had a good season, which is the reason he's on the All USFL team. 4 interceptions, 8 pass breakups. Both deserve to be on this list. But a few other players I think could be here is Amani Dennis, and Brian Allen. But I do like Stripling and Lightning here, and once again, I agree with the USFL. On to the safeties, we have Shimon Lulani of the Generals and Bryce Torrenden of the Maulers. Hopefully I said his name correctly. So Lulani did miss time with a leg injury, but he provided a huge spark to the Generals' defense, and helped them become one of the best defenses in the USFL, ever since returning from his injury in Week 4, I think. He currently leads safeties with 4 interceptions, and for only playing, I believe it's like 6 games, he's been really, really good for the Generals. And Torrenden for the Maulers, 1 interception, 66 tackles, 3, while breaking up 3 passes. So both are deserving, and I agree with both. On to the special teams players. So kicker Brandon Aubrey of the Stallions, he made the transition from soccer to football, and he was really, really good. The most consistent kicker. Started from week 1, played all 9 games for the Stallions. 18 of 22 on field goals, good enough for 82% on field goals. And 19 of 21 on extra points, which is 90.5%. So I definitely agree with him being on the All USFL team. For the punter, that's Brandon Wright of the Bandits. I agree. But I also think he could have gotten to Matt White of the Breakers. Both had really, really good ones. Really good seasons. Special teamer was Victor Bolden. Don't really have a bunch to say about that. Kick returner Maurice Alexander of the Stars. He led everyone with 707 kick return yards. And also had the longest kick return of 66 yards. And so I agree with him. And punt returner Kevontae Turpin, the only player with a kick or punt return touchdown this season, and also led the USFL with 184 punt return yards. So again, I agree with him. So that is the All USFL team and my thoughts on whether those players deserve to be on the All USFL team or not. Overall, I feel that the USFL did a really, really good job, not missing anyone. I really think I only disagree with one spot, and that's Jordan Ellis over Reggie Corbin. Or that's how I would have it. But otherwise, I agree. I think they did a really good job with this list. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. If I missed someone they missed, let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.